Who needs SP buffs? Since I've been making Phantom Parade videos for a little while now, as well as streaming every so often, one common question I've been asked is, who do I think needs SP buffs, or who do I think will get SP buffs next? Now, these are questions that are pretty much the same thing, to be honest. If a unit needs SP buffs really desperately, they're probably going to be in the next batch of units to get SP buffs. But since Phantom Parade right now is kind of busy with all the culling game stuff on JP and finishing the anniversary on Global, we haven't heard a peep about new SP buffs for a while. So in this video, I'm going to go through the units I think need SP buffs the most, some units that have been suggested that need SP buffs from comment sections and live stream chats, as well as my top 5 most likely to get SP buffs in the near future. But with that intro out of the way, let's talk about SP buffs. If I say SP buffs anymore, I'm going to go insane, and it's just the start of the video, so that doesn't bode well. So as you can see here, I've got a tier list because that's just what I do now. If you look at my channel, it's 99% tier list at this point, it feels, or at least on stream. Anyway, just looking at this format, you can see characters who I think need SP buffs the most. They're not like ranked as of right now, they're just in typings, if you couldn't tell, and I'll rank them by which one I think is the most likely to get them. And this row on the bottom are characters that have been suggested to me as characters that also need SP buffs, and I'll talk about these as well. Probably I'll talk about them first, to be honest, because some of these are absolutely ludicrous. Like, come on now. Blue Sakuna, come on now. We'll start off at the bottom and go through a couple of units that I've heard people say need SP buffs the most, right? And a relatively common one, not uncommon, is Green Miwa. Now, Green Miwa's a weird one to me. I know a couple, like a month or two back, I think, I put her in my like top 5 worst units in the game, which I think is fair, but she's still viable. The reason I put her so low is because she's kind of useless at this point, ironically enough, just because so many characters do what she does, but better. Like, there's no reason to use her. We have Green SP Yuji, and as of right now on JP, you've got a new Green Yuji who does even more damage than her, and also buffs stats, and also hits black. Like, there's no reason to use Miwa, so I could see why a lot of people would suggest that she needs them. I would argue there are other green units, like 3 in my opinion, that need SP buffs more than her, because these 3 are relatively completely obsolete, while she still has some value, because she isn't terrible. She still does decent physical damage, it's just that SP Green Yuji is a beast, so he'll do more, and the new Culling Games Yuji does similar if not more damage and is a stat buffer. Despite that, Green Miwa's damage isn't terrible, but I can see why people would want to buff her. If I were to give her SP buffs, time to get into the, you know, the fantasy of it all, if I were to increase this unit and make her better, the thing I would do was make her like Kusakabe. And when I say that, I mean that in 2 ways. So Kusakabe, strangely enough, doesn't really have provocation, despite the fact that he's like a counter unit. He can counter range attacks as well, but he can buff himself with counters if he gets crits. The main gimmick with Kusakabe, if you didn't know, is what you want with him is for him to hit crits, because that buffs his own damage as well as the stats of everyone. 45%. You filthy. That's disgusting. That's great. Whenever he hits a crit, and his crit chances are high. It's only a 25%, yeah, but it hits 5 times. Like, he's gonna crit, okay? On top of that, right, he can be absolutely filthy in support, because, increases own taijutsu, blah, 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 counterattacks him, whatever, who gives a fuck? Who gives a flip? Decreases jujutsu damage by 40. That seems pretty good. You can also give it to the full team if he uses it twice, which is also disgusting. Like, giving that for like 3 turns pretty much, if you haven't, you spend like 2 or 3 turns to give 40% less jujutsu damage received is huge. On top of buffing the team, I think that's how they should change Green Miwa. Make her like a sub DPS in the same way Kusakabe is. Make it so when she crits, she buffs the team. Obviously not as much as the new Culling Games Green Yuji, but like make it so when she crits, because she is critting often, that she buffs the team, right? Am I saying she needs to like be able to counter as better than Kusakabe? No, because Kusakabe's the GOAT. He should be top 1 unit in the game in my opinion, but just make it so she's more of a stat buffer as a sub DPS, because right now she's got a very confused kit, because she suffers from like remnants of kind of like an attempt at typings, which never really got pushed forward. Like, she gets more damage, like she increased stats, like damage dealt up, if she has more sister like Kyoto school students on her team, but that would suggest like categories like Green Muta, Blue Momo, Red Mai, like they don't fit on a team together, but if, you know, if categories were in the game, they would, but they're not, so they don't. You can kind of get rid of that and just give her another like auto skill that makes it so, you know, where is it? When she crits, boom, just increase green type stats. Do that, and she'll be like, her viability, will it be increased? Granted, because everyone's gotten Green Yuji, it still wouldn't make her mega viable, but it'd still make her like good. It would still make her really good, because I think she's on the standard pool now, so you might have a high dupe count, so she could be busted in the future, right? high dupes, stat buffer. She could be really good. I think that's an interesting way to buff her. If you had to give her SP buffs, just make it so she's a stat buffer. You have to kind of change her kit from being, I think she's literally classed as a DPS. Just change her role, make her from a DPS to a buffer. Simple as. Now, this is probably going to be a really long yap session. I'm not going to edit this too much, just put footage on screen and little zooms and stuff for funny comedic effect. But overall, this is going to be slightly edited because this is going to be a rather long yap session. But we can just put her down there because I don't think she needs it. But if you were to do it, I'll keep it on there just so you can remember what I was talking about. Now, the second one I always hear about is a lot of people want Degumi to get buffs, which I think is kind of stupid because he is still incredibly viable. You will still find people using Degumi on flaws of tower. Like, I think yellow as of right now is really, really strong, so you don't need him too much because Shoko, Yaga, Yuki, Kusakabe, yellow is really, and Junpei on top of that, like, yellow is really strong support-wise, yet despite that fact, if debuffing is allowed, people will still use Degumi because the debuffs provided by his domain skill 1, dude, it's 100%. And it stacks. Like, it's filthy. On top of the increased damage from being inside domain, on top of, increased taijutsu damage if you end it with his skill 3 and stuff. Like, this dude can be genuinely filthy. He does not need SP buffs. It's a surprisingly common one I hear. I get it. He's not as viable as he used to be, but he is still ridiculously strong. It's a really common one. I don't understand why it's so common. People really want Degumi to be like top 1 in the game. I get that. He like was top 3 at one point when he released, and I get that. He isn't top 3 anymore, but he's still really strong. He's still, like, Degumi's still really good. People need to stop it. He's still really good. Nimble Body Yuji, or the past Red Yuji, the invalid Red Yuji, right? This unit's still really good. I don't think he needs them. I still think, this Red Yuji is still incredibly strong. It's just, you look at the other Red Yuji and you just kind of, if you don't have him, you're kind of looking longingly at him being like, oh, I wish I had him. But even if you don't, if you have Nimble Body Yuji, he's on the standard pool, still really strong. His Black Flash chances were really high, and as a result, the buffs he get from Black Flashes, 40%. Come on now. He gets a guaranteed Black Flash with his ult, and as well as this big debuff, because he's just like a DPS, sub DPS, he doesn't need it, but that big debuff can really help. He's most commonly used alongside him as a sub DPS and Toji behind him. You use his skill to increase his skill rate, get some massive break damage buffs. He can be really good, and then you ult together with that, Red Toji, and you get like filthy damage. These two work really well together, and it's a shame because now Red Yuji, like the new like Shibuya Red Yuji, is like just a much stronger one, and his kit is much more unique and more fun, but that does not mean this Yuji is like completely invalid. If you don't have, I forget his name, what's he actually called? Maximum Output Red Yuji, I think he's just called. I don't think he's a very creative name, but I think that's his name. Yeah, Maximum Cursed Energy Output, crazy. If you don't have him, Nimble Body is still really strong. Don't worry about it. But this video is already I'm like 10 minutes into the recording, and I haven't even started talking about the units that actually need SP buffs yet. Green Megumi is another weird one I hear relatively consistently, and it's another one of those things where I'm like, come on now. This Megumi is still perfectly fine, right? He is just the green equivalent of Red Mai. You get set up using your skill 2. I think it's skill 3 in Red Mai's case, but you understand the concept where, why does this not have an icon? Like, he has like mid debuffs for the enemy, but because of that, he also has a chance for follow-ups to increase those debuffs by a significant amount. Like, if you've got like a stat buffer like this new green Yuji, or like, just like the chance for follow-ups, 55% when anyone just does a command skill. Like, come on now. Like, dude, 15% for 2 turns on top of his ult, which is 45 for 3 turns, on top of his skill 2, which is 30%. Like, he is doing decent damage alongside this as well. He's doing dastardly decent damage. It's disgusting and diabolical even. Alliteration is always fun. I don't think the debuffs are as good as Red Mai, but his damage is higher as a result. If off the top of my head, that's how I feel about it. I might be statistically incorrect. Feel free to tell me that I'm wrong below. But I don't think he's terrible. There are better green supporters. Green still has a very strong support system, which is a weird way to word it. Especially with the new green Yuji. I'm going to keep bringing him up because he kind of changes the meta a bit for green. Not too much, but it just makes green taijutsu specifically much stronger, especially with the new green Todo. These two are demons, right? But you also have green Shoko, Geto, Choso. You have really, really good debuffers. Granted, you only, you have two, you have a buffer / healer and a stat buffer now, which is great. Like, green is in a really comfortable position. You could swap out Geto for Megumi, and they'll be doing similar sort of things, right? Geto, I think, is better overall, which, I'll mention him in a sec because people still think he needs him. But he's still, Green Megumi is not bad. He's in the standard pool, really strong. Same with Yellow Yuki. Yellow Yuki, I think, is fine. I just think if he could be buffed just with, like, a patch. I think if they just, like, toned down this skill by 5 CE Or if they don't do that, just increase this by like 5% or something. Well, a little bit more than 5%. Just increase the stat on his skill 2 for yellow type. He'd be filthy, right? Increase all damage dealt by 15. Increase that by a decent amount. He'll be absolutely filthy. Not significant amount, but a little bit of an amount. His ult also is exclusive to Jujutsu, which is a bit annoying to me. But it increases stats. But it's also like a one-time thing. But Yuki is fine because he's also got a similar built-in thing to Rare Yuki where he will be giving cursed energy to the team, and it's not an insignificant amount. But as a result, this Yuki will also chew through cursed energy, which is why I said I'd like this to be decreased slightly. But, you know, when you ult, that goes from 20 to 15, so it's not too bad. I still think this Yuki is incredibly viable. I've used him on, like, you still use him in the 70s, he's still perfectly fine. He's not as good as Shoko, but as a stat buffer, he's certainly not terrible. Yes, similar to Rare Yuki as well. The main front of this like stat increase is going to come from his ult, and he's cast technique exclusive. Don't be using him with like Zonji and stuff, but he's still very good, right? Very good. Team Geto, okay, this is genuinely stupid. I don't know why people need. I've seen Team Geto suggested, and I don't know why. Did someone just subscribe? Why did I just get that notification? I don't know why people suggest Team Geto. He does great damage. His debuffs are high and consistent and last a while. And his ult damage is really, really good. His debuffing can be used on Jujutsu and Taijutsu and can be exclusively split that way. Like, he can just decide, right? It makes hybrid damage a little bit annoying, but even still, like, really good. His auto skill, like, increasing himself, and he gets cast energy. He gets, like, an extra 10 cast energy. Like, he's just really good. I don't understand why people think this dude needs more. He's on the standard pool, and he's still really strong, right? Green just has some of the best debuffers in the game, right? Genuinely. Choso is filthy. Geto filthy. Megami, okay. But, you know, it's fine. It's fine. It's great. Now, moving on to this one, I don't even need to say anything, because I guess how Fugakuna made them feel and how powerful Blue Yuta was, they started to feel as if Blue Sukuna fell off a significant amount. No. Blue Sukuna is not... He didn't fall off so much. Like, he didn't even really fall off. It's just that someone stronger came in, and they're not so much stronger that you can't use them. Blue Sukuna is still disgusting. Yes, there's like one flaw. I think it's flaw 81, where you can't use like continuous damage. Or is it not? I think it's flaw 80. Yeah, flaw 80, where you can't use continuous damage. It's one of the... around that ballpark, right? And as a result, you just can't use him, so you kind of have to use Yuta, so to speak. You don't really have much of a choice. I imagine some people beat it with Camo or whatever, but exclusively as a DPS, but this dude's filthy. His damage is disgusting. His ult, his DOT is disgusting. His survivability with his healing is disgusting. If you think this dude needs an SP system, you need a rock, like, thrown at your skull. You are a silly Billy. That's a bit much. You need someone to tell you that you're wrong. And you're wrong. He does not need SP buffs. Green, okay, Choso, I don't know why. Choso was top 1 in the game, he was like ridiculous on release, and he's still really freaking good. People still use Choso like in the top tier flaws because he's disgusting. I've seen people, I'm not going to pull up like the screenshots and shit, these are just units I remember people mentioning that need SP buffs when I discussed them on stream before, and I remember someone mentioning Choso, and I was just flabbergasted. Like, dog, just because a unit like may get slightly outshined by a newer unit in the future doesn't mean the past ones all need SP buffs immediately. No. And Choso doesn't even feel that. He has great DOT, great damage, great buffs, great debuffs, great like disruption. Like, he doesn't need anything. I don't even explain it. Choso's goated. You don't even need to tell. I don't need to tell you. He's sick as hell. Now, Ino is it's a conflicted one for me, because Ino on release was middling to, if not bad. Like, he came out mediocre. He came out uncooked, or at least, you know, he needed a couple more minutes in the oven. Now, the way I suggest, like, the thing with Ino is, I think they could just fix him with a patch, the same way they'd like buffed Blue Geto. You just come out with a patch and just increase the stats, he'll be 10 times better. That's all he really needs, right? He does chew through cursed energy a lot, but just on, you know, if it's like a hard sweep floor or whatever, you have Yuki out in front anyway, and you just give CE, so it doesn't really matter. But the main issue is just his stats overall. Like, 900%, even, as I've said before, even with Jujutsu, 50%, it's not enough. He needs more. He needs the 30% or whatever are fine, just increase everything else. His numbers need to be higher. That's it. That is literally it. He would be so much better. It's his stats holding him back. Everything else about his kit, conceptually, is fun, unique, and just intriguing, right? Giving himself 2 turns, that also give him a chance for evade, decrease damage taken. It decreases his ult gauge, but that's fine because he's also doing 2 turns. That's really cool, fun, and unique. That's great. He starts off with extra Jujutsu and cursed energy just because he's going to be a grade 1 sorcerer, you know? Great. He gets 2 turns, and he gets an extra 5 cursed energy when he uses an additional turn. It's great. I think his kit is really fun. And as I've said on like a Should You Summon months ago when he first came out on Global, you don't need him. You don't. Because he's yes, you have the choice, which is really cool, between like melee damage, well, taijutsu and jujutsu. He's mainly a jujutsu DPS because you're going to get a big brunt of it from his ult and from his skill too. And that's fine and everything. But at the same time, the stats are so low, it's just buff his stats. That's TLDR. Buff Eno's stats. He doesn't need a kit change. People need to realize that SP buffs aren't so simple for the most part, where they just are stat increases, right? It completely changed Camo from this mid DPS to one of the best debuffers in the game, as well as a DPS. It made... What's another good example of something where the kit was completely changed? It changed, you know, Green Saki to one of the most mid pseudo tanks into genuinely the best tank in the game outside of maybe Blue Miwa. Made Blue Todo and Yuji decent DPSs when they were dog water and release. It made Miguel one of the best blue units in the game. Made Mekamaru disgusting and made his provocation filthy and counterattacks guaranteed with debuffs on top. Like, as I said, people need to recognize that SP buffs aren't as something as simple as, you know, an increase in stats. They can do that whenever they feel like it, you know. If they think a unit is getting bad, they have been known to just change them with a patch. They'll do that, right? But if a unit needs a full kit change, that's when SP buffs come in. Like with, you know, Junpei, they changed how his, you know, they gave him stat buffs, and they changed how all of his kit work, and now he's 10 times better, and he's great for yellow, right? None of these units need kit changes, so to speak. They just need stat buffs, or they don't need anything, like Sukuna, Joso, Degumi. They don't need anything, right? Some of these, you could argue, maybe increase the debuffs on Green Megami, maybe increase the damage on Green Miwa, or whatever, but overall, they don't really need huge kit changes. But CTA time. Like, comment, subscribe, please. I'm begging you. Also, I have a Patreon, because obviously I do, right? If you want to support the channel, just like, comment, subscribe, etc. If you want to do more, do more. It's all chilling. I'll probably have channel memberships. Maybe I do. I'll have to check. I think I do. Anyway, support the channel. Back to the video. Let's get into these. So, I've talked about all of these on stream before. I've done a tier list of, well, I've went through units who I think need SP buffs before on stream, but that wasn't the focus of the stream, so I may as well thought I'd make a dedicated video. I think it's quite obvious that I'm going to put him in 1 for the most likely to get it, as well as the one who needs it the most. But I'll explain why in a second. So, Red Todo, I think, is the most likely to get SP buffs for a couple of reasons. When Red Yuji came out, the gameplay that we saw to show him off, he was alongside, you know, Red Todo in the gameplay that was first released. And it made sense. They came out with a Yuji for red and a Todo for green. And we've already got a Yuji for green and a Todo for red, so use them alongside each other. Now they're paired up with each other. And green SP Yuji already had SP buffs, so he was fine working alongside the new green Todo. This red Yuji is an amazing DPS and should have support from an amazing red Todo, but he doesn't. Red Todo is, as I've said before, one of, if not the worst units in the game. He spends too much cast energy for no return. He doesn't do nowhere near... His ult does okay damage, but that is literally it. The taijutsu buff from this is completely negligible. And the best friend status, while fun, is bad on Red Todo, great on Green Todo. Like, I've said it before, this dude just needs a full kit change. They need to increase disruption and decrease the cost for it. Increase the taijutsu stat buff significantly. Do something with this move so there's ever a reason to use it. I mean, it doesn't even Black Flash for some reason, even though the counterattack version, which uses the same animation, can Black Flash, which I think is genuinely completely stupid. Like, you can, with his counterattack, it can Black Flash. Despite the fact the same animation is used for skill 1 and is skill 3, because it's the same animation reused 3 times in a row pretty much. It's just the third one has like a longer intro where he throws the rock and switches with it, but the hit, the hammer knuckle, is used in all 3 animations, which is genuinely stupid. Outside of that, because they showed off Red Yuji with Red Todo, it made everyone think he was getting SP buffs, because as I said, I feel like the community collectively agrees he needs them the most, and he didn't. So it makes me think in the next batch of SP buffs, this dude is going to be like front and center. I've been saying it for ages, but I think this dude will become an absolute monster in the future. I will stand on business. When he gets SP buffs, he will be disgusting. Especially alongside the new, like, red, you know, max output Yuji. I think these two will be made for each other, objectively. But as of right now, top 5 worst units in the game. Watch my video about that. Now, who else is ridiculously likely? I've said these before. I pretty much said it in my top 5 worst units video, and it's going to be very similar to this. So, Yellow Inumaki is dog water. Right, now let me get him on screen real quick. I've explained why I hate him before in like the worst units video. I don't really need to say so like again. They buffed him with patches and it didn't change anything. He's still dog water. It's still like 15% for 2 turns. Oh wait, it's 23% for 2 turns. And it does break damage. Ooh, wow. But there's literally, you'd only ever use him for his auto skill, but even then, just use Shoko or Yaga or like any supporter instead, or sub DPS you'd get more value out of, to be honest. Just run Junpei with like a healing memory and he'll provide more value than this. The damage that yellow Junpei provides from his stat buffs will provide more than the debuff provide from his skill 2, and Junpei will do more damage with his ult. Like there's literally no reason to use this guy, and that's when SP buffs come into play. When there's literally no reason to use the unit, that's when SP buffs come. Like if they're still pretty strong, like Green Mila for example, they don't necessarily need them, but it's still a possibility. Yellow Inumaki, there's no reason to use him. There's not much to say there. He just sucks. His auto skill is a fun gimmick, but it sucks because just you run a healing memory instead with like a better support unit and you'll get much more value. Like there's not much to say about him. He's just terrible. I've had some people try to claim that like he's, you know, a hidden underrated GOAT. He's not. He's trash. Shut up. As I said, 1 to 5 are the ones that I think are most likely to get them. So one little factor you need to take into consideration is how early on the unit was released. The older the unit, the more likely they'll get an SP buff, because the more outdated their kit will be by definition because of their release date, right? And as a result, of course, Blue Gojo. Now, of course, we also have, you know, currently on JP, I say we, I'm not a JP player, but, you know, we have the new Blue Gojo that I've said my opinions about quite vocally. But because he exists, this Blue Gojo, there's no reason for him to exist at all, except for like really, he's good for early game content and like the boss battles where you get memories from, if you know what I'm talking about. Like he's good for them, but beyond that, like he's not, beyond like the first 40, 50 stages of tower, you're not gonna need him like at all. He's a fun nuker, but 7 turns is so short. It is ridiculously short. This is disgusting, right? His skill 3 is disgusting. But, dog, 7 turns is not enough. It's really not. Red Yuji's doing double this, bro. Fugu Sakuna is doing more than, like, yeah, technically more than double. It's 2,100, like 1% less than double. I've heard a lot of unique ways. Like, here's the thing. It's so commonly agreed upon that this Blue Gojo is, like, almost requires SP buffs now to have some sort of viability on any stage, like, whether it be sweep. Obviously, he can't be used in sweep. 7 turns out of 17, that doesn't work. You know, 7 turns on a tower floor, usually it goes up to 30 or 40 for a reason. 7 turns doesn't mean dick, doesn't mean diddly squat, you know? I really need to stop swearing so much. I need ad revenue. Because of, as I've said, how the community is collectively agreed that this dude needs buffs, I've heard a lot of creative ways to, you know, change his kit to make him viable. The one I always said was, make it so this has, like, it does more damage, because there's never really a reason to use his skill 2, because he's a Jujutsu-focused DPS, so you're not going to use him on Taijutsu stages, so there's never a reason to use his skill. But make it so when he black flashes, he, like, pauses the timer, or he gets an extra turn or something. Or do the same, and do the same with his ult. If he ults, pause the timer, similar with Domain Gojo, right? I've heard some people say, remove the timer completely. And I'm like, that's okay in theory, because his moveset and damage isn't so ridiculous that would make him like top 1 unit in the game. It would make every stage technically easy to do because he's immortal, you know, unless he's in a domain. So they would probably put like a timer on the Limitless, I think is smarter. You do the same with like Crack Jaw or, you know, Teen Gojo, like Yellow Teen Gojo, where the Limitless is there for a while, but then you have to reapply it with like a new version of his skill 2, or make it so when the Limitless runs out, his skill 3 like just applies it as well as the buff. There are a ton of different ways you could make Blue Gojo great again, so to speak. Something needs to be done. I don't know what specifically, I don't know what they will do. Just increasing his damage, like they have to know just increasing his damage won't fix anything. That's why SP buffs are needed. That's what I was saying earlier, like just increasing his stats won't make him viable at all, right? He needs more turns, he needs more damage as well as buffs or debuffs or something built into his kit, and he doesn't have those. That's why he needs SP buffs, not just a straight patch buff. This dude needs a full rework, you know, which is relatively likely. Now, would I put him in 4th? I'll talk about him first, but it's literally everything that applies to Blue Gojo applies to Green, but it's worse for Green, because at least Blue Gojo gets 7 turns and then he dips, right? And you can fit 2 ults in there. 3 if you're using Red Inumaki with like ult like memories and stuff, you can probably squeeze out 3 if you're really good. You're doing some weird stuff, sure. But this dude gets 1 ult. Yes, the DPS is really high, but 1 ult is not good, especially like that's just not it. So you're getting less than 7 turns, which is like dog. He needs them as well. But I'm trying. I'm all of these are my opinion, and on this row could really use them. Blue Nanami least of which, because I still think he's relatively fine. I just think they need to up his stats when it comes to black flashes. When it I think the rate is significantly too low. I think they just need to slightly buff his black flash rate and he'll be a great unit. Not great, but good. And that's all he needs to be. All of them from Gojo left, like Dagon, Mahito, Panda, Momo, and Hanami, I think all of them need SP buffs. They need kit changes, or at least patches in very specific ways. Momo needs a patch where it increases the duration of her buffs, because right now her buffs last 2 turns. Whilst those buffs are really good, they're big buffs, they're really strong buffs, Look at that, break damage and about 70% damage increase. That's huge, but 2 turns is mid, to put it one way. Yeah, this is fine, this is whatever, but this is not good. If they just increase this by a turn or 2, she would be filthy. It wouldn't even be funny. She would be filthy if they just gave her an extra turn or 2. And that's all she needs. I still think her ult is incredibly viable. Just the fact that she, high chance for stun. Stun's not viable on most stages. Yeah, I get it. But that's a nice little thing on top. But the fact that she decreases ult gauge by 1 has saved your bacon more than you've realised. If you've used Blue Momo on a stage and you've ulted with her, she has saved you with that ult gauge. Trust me. It's filthy. A skill 1 is still pretty decent. It's that's still good for a skill 1. You run out of cast energy and you have to use this. That's not bad. That's not a bad skill 1. Yeah, as I said, Blue has a decent amount of debuffers and units that buff each other. You've got Geto, best debuffer, if not one of the best debuffers in the game. Camo, Inumaki, even Miguel now gives everyone stats when he crits and stuff. It's great. And Momo is the universal one who's kind of left behind a little bit. Since she came out relatively close to release, I think it's increasingly likely that she will get them. To be honest, these 3 I could all put in 5 because Panda is a release unit. I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but let me just calm down. Okay, I'm going to tell you why I think all 3 of these could get SP buffs. I know it's supposed to be a top 5, but shut up. It's my video. I can do what I want. And you want me to yap longer? Don't ya? So shut up. So Green Panda, especially because he's on green, and so is SP Saki, he is cooked. There is no reason to ever use this unit, which, as I said, that's when SP buffs are needed. So his whole gimmick is, as you'd expect, he does provocation and he reduces his own damage. Great. That's a good thing. But I think when he loses that when he ults. It's just it changes when he ults, so it's not the same. He literally has the same exact goal, so to speak, as this Saki, but this skill just makes this Panda completely null and void. Yes, he has a resurrection status, which is cool, he has gorilla mode, pretty epic, but it's not enough. This Saki is a lot of old school Dokkan units. I think I made the comparison before, and it's pretty apt between Saki and Green, LR, Goku Black, and I think it's pretty succinct. She takes turn, for every singular attack she takes, she does more damage. And she'll do okay damage. She's not going to do anything crazy, She'll hit a couple million, a decent millions over the course of, an entire tower stage, but she's not going to blow you away with her damage, right? She'll do okay, which is that's all she needs to do, because that's not her goal. She also has a revival status, but on top of that, she's also buffing herself and doing more damage and reducing the damage she takes and provocation, and it costs 15 as opposed to 40? 25. I think the buff it? Yeah, it used to be 40, sorry. But even still, 25 to 15, and the buffs here are better, and she buffs herself when she gets hit more, and she's just the same but better. There's literally no reason to use Panda. Panda needs it. What would you do to Panda? I guess make the provocation last longer, give him more damage. I don't know. Make it so when he changes into gorilla status, it's more viable. So make him a bigger DPS, or make it so he debuffs once he goes gorilla as well. That's probably what they'll do. I guess I could see them making him blue camo, where he can debuff a significant amount as well as output good damage. I could probably see them going that way. Now these 2, oh my god, Hanami and Mahito are here's the thing. I've talked about it so many times before, but it cannot be understated how filthy these 2 were for early tower. There's a reason where if you look at early tower formations, it was just Mahito, Inumaki, Yuki, and Hanami, right? You're just giving yourself infinite cursed energy and infinite ult charge to take infinitely less damage while also doing 15% damage with Mahito's ult per time he domains, right? It's filthy. but because of that, they changed how the floors work, so only mono-type teams are pretty much viable for the most part. Yeah, there are like some stages where you can kind of use Crackjaw and cheese it by just, because he's pretty much immortal, so you can get through a lot of stages by just cheesing it with Crackjaw. I forgot what I was saying. Either way, this dude just fell off now. The damage he does isn't great. There's a fun gimmick with his skill 1 that it will always be like strong against the enemy. So if it's like you're on a blue stage, even though Mahito's green, his skill 1 will do blue damage, which I think is a cool gimmick. I think that's fun, but I don't think it doesn't really do anything. You're not going to use him on a blue stage anyway, so there's not much of a point. I don't know how they would change him, but he needs a full kit revamp. I guess just increase his stats. I imagine if the percentage-based stuff is really good. Like, it is really good. And the thing that made it so strong with Hanami is because you can, like, overwrite domains. So you would overwrite Hanami's domain, and like you would just go back and forth overwriting domains because you would get ult charged so fast. So you can keep kind of just going domain. Now the thing with Hanami is that, I don't know, Hanami's still viable, but I just think, I don't know how you would change Hanami. It's just the slots on red are already kind of filled up. So here's the thing. Because of how they pushed Phantom Parade, as they made it so every stage kind of gets capped off at 40, or the enemy does so much damage to the point after turn 30 where you just die instantly anyway, right? As a result, that makes Hanami kind of pointless because Hanami's whole gimmick is kind of stalling. She's a stall merchant, right? She debuffs the damage so much that you cannot be killed, which is great. But if there's a set time limit, using her is like a huge mistake because if you're not using another DPS or a different debuffer or buffer, you're not going to be able to kill the enemy in time. And if you don't kill the enemy in time, you lose the stage anyway. So using Hanami will just end up getting you killed. So there's not, I guess, increase her damage or make it so her debuffs also increase damage taken. I could see that. If they make her like a red Degumi that also decreases damage, she could be disgusting. She could be like, that would be phenomenal. She'd be like another Domain Gojo, right? But I don't see that happening. I don't think they'd make her that, but I don't see them making Hanami that busted. I wish they would, but I don't think they will. With Mahito, I could say just increase his stats, make him so he's more viable as a Jujutsu DPS for green, which is great. But with Hanami, I feel like the only way forward is to either the SP buffs mean nothing, or the SP buffs make Hanami ridiculously busted, right? I think those are the only two ways to go. Because Hanami gets ult really quickly, right? And has some unique gimmicks like, oh, depending on ult skill count, you'll do more damage. That's kind of neat. You know, they'll probably buff their skill too for some reason. I can see. They like to buff skills that don't really need it. I can see them buffing the skill. If they make it so, like, this skill also increases damage taken, filthy. If they make it so this ult increases the damage taken by enemies in domain, as well as increasing the damage they take when you launch domain, it will be filthy, right? That's what Hanami needs. I can't see any other way to rework Hanami's kit to make them viable as of right now, as I said, because of how the meta works in Phantom Parade, specifically on tower and on sweep. You have a very finite amount of time, so having a unit that stalls for time doesn't work. Just conceptually, the kit can't work in this current meta, which is a shame, because Hanami as a unit is really cool, and everyone was gassed up when Hanami first came out because it was the first time we saw Hanami's domain in the series, which is, as I think, really cool. You know, as I've said before, I think that's friggin' awesome because we didn't see it in the main series and we see it in Phantom Parade, but now no one ever sees it because no one ever uses Hanami because there's no reason to, or at least in modern content, so to speak. You're not going to be using her in newer floors on sweep, or newer floors on tower, or in hard sweep, or normal sweep for that matter. But yeah, these are the characters who I think need SP buffs. All three of these can be in 5 because screw you. The reason I don't think Dagon will get SP buffs immediately is just because of how new he is. He is the newest free-to-play unit, technically, outside of, like, Green, Yuji. Like, he's the latest Phantom Medal unit, right? And since it took a while for Jogo to get SP buffs, and he was, like, the game released, I think it was Jogo and Hanami were the first two. And then Mahito released shortly afterwards, like a couple of weeks later. And then Dagon came out all the way when they started releasing Shibuya stuff, right? And since Dagon's so much newer compared to those two, I can't see him getting SP buffs anytime soon, which is a shame. I think he needs them significantly. I think he needs them as much as a lot of other people on this list because there is no reason to use him at all. Specifically, he can't make use of Degumi because he would overwrite Degumi's domain. You can't use him, like, he's supposed to be a Jujutsu damage dealer, okay? So you can't use Degumi alongside him. You can use Yuki, sure, you can use Shoko and Yaga, but if you're using him as a Jujutsu damage dealer, you're not using Fugakuna. Like, just use Teen Gojo, who's on the standard pool. You've probably got Teen Gojo, he does more damage, he's better, he gets ult gauge faster, he can make make himself like pretty much invincible. Just use Teen Gojo. There's no reason to use, you know, Dagon, because he has significant downsides like overwriting Degumi, so you can't use him with Degumi, and damage outside of domain is abysmal. It's like Red Yaga. Like, he does support damage outside of domain, and in damage he does mediocre damage. There's no reason to use him. He needs SP buffs badly. But as I said, this video is probably not going to be mega edited. I'll cut it down. The record's about 40 minutes as of this point. Yeah, this was just a yap session. Hopefully you like these sorts of videos. Ideally, I'm going to make these videos longer so I get more ad revenue, so then I can make more videos. Genius level IQ. But as I said, you know, I'll probably put a CTS somewhere in the middle of this video, I hope. Here's my doodles, hope you see the next one. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know if you disagree, or if you think, you know, some of these other units SP buffs. Hey, maybe you think this green Yuji is dog shit and already needs SP buffs. Maybe you do. Obviously he doesn't, but maybe that's how you think, because you're a psychopath. I don't know. But with that being said, I'm done with this video. Here's my doodles, hope you see the next one. Peace. Yeah, good video.